Hello, board members. Once again, the boardroom is open, and today it's a Marvel Crisis Protocol character review of the Green Goblin. All right, so we're taking a look at Green Goblin today. His top line stats show that he has 7 health on his healthy side, medium movement, size 3, and 4 threat level. He's got a melee defense of 4 dice. He's got a ranged defense of 3 dice. And a psychic defense of 3 dice. Look, everybody knows that there's no love lost between Green Goblin and Spider-Man, so I figured who better to portray the powers, abilities, and attacks of Green Goblin than the web-slinging, neighborhood-friendly Spider-Man himself. Starting with the first attack, Green Goblin has pumpkin bombs. It's a melee attack. It's a ranged 4, and he gets 4 dice, and it costs no power. So from sitting here, you can see Green Goblin is in range to throw pumpkin bombs from the top of that building. Pumpkin Bomb says before choosing a target, this character chooses whether this attack's type is melee or ranged. Of course, the benefit there is if somebody has a worse ranged defense or lesser melee defense, you can pick and choose so they get less dice to roll. After this attack is resolved, Green Goblin gains power equal to the damage he dealt. So this is a power generating attack. If he rolls any wild dice, he'll get to trigger Bag of Tricks. Before the damage is dealt, the enemy character gains one of the following special conditions: bleed, poison, or incinerate. Of course, bleed will make Spider-Man here take 1 damage at the end of every one of his activations. Poison will drain him of 1 power during the power phase, and incinerate will make him lose 1 die during his defense rolls. So any of those conditions are pretty horrible. His second power, Knight of the Goblin, also a melee attack, is range 3, but 7 dice. However, this one costs 4 power, so it's a little bit expensive. And he's got to kind of get in there, right? He's got to get a bit closer to Spidey, so he'd have to be, closer to the enemies than he'd want. But now he's within 3, and he can activate Knight of the Goblin. By paying 4 power, he can say, but before choosing a target, this character chooses whether the attack again is melee or ranged. If this attack deals damage, after the attack is resolved, the target character gains the poison and incinerate special conditions. So he's going to lay 2 terrible special conditions on Spider-Man if it deals damage. The next ability is a leadership ability called Oscorp Weaponry. It's the affiliation of spider foes. Once per turn, when an allied character is attacking, it can spend 1 power when modifying opposing defense dice. If it does, it may re-roll 1 opposing defense die. That's pretty handy. His next power is Hit and Run. Now this is where I think he can get himself out of trouble, because if he uses Knight of the Goblin, he gets himself in trouble. Hit and Run is going to get him out of trouble. It does take 1 of his 2 actions, and it costs 2 power. Green Goblin immediately makes an attack action, followed by a move action. This superpower can only be used once per turn. So if Green Goblin was in this predicament, he could spend 2 power to activate Hit and Run, using Knight of the Goblin for 4 more power. Now this assumes that Green Goblin had 6 power to spend, but let's assume that. He could make an attack, Knight of the Goblin, shake those 7 dice, put some conditions onto Spider-Man, and then he has the ability afterwards. It says, make an attack followed by a move action, move medium, get himself back up onto this building, and that was all 1 action. His second action could then, of course, be to activate Pumpkin Bombs. So by activating Pumpkin Bombs from atop the Daily Bugle, he's going to rain down pumpkins on top of Spider-Man. Before choosing a target, he's going to choose whether it's melee or ranged, like we talked about. After it's resolved, he's going to gain power equal to the damage dealt. So hopefully he gains some of that 6 power that he just spent on Hit and Run and Knight of the Goblin back for a future round. After Hit and Run, we have Trick or Treat. Now this one's a little bit more interesting. We're going to bring Green Goblin back down here. We're going to say Spider-Man was out of the action for the moment. It says when an enemy character ends an advance or is placed within 4 of Green Goblin may use this superpower, costs 3. Choose an interactive terrain feature size 3 or less within 2 of the enemy character that was moved or placed. Destroy that terrain feature, and the enemy character suffers a collision as if the terrain feature had collided with it. So in swoops your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. If he stops within 4 of Green Goblin, which he very well did, Green Goblin may spend 3 power and choose an interactive terrain feature size 3 or less. We'll do the car, as long as it's within 2 of Spider-Man, which it is. And we'll destroy this terrain feature, and Spider-Man will act as if he had a collision with it for 3 damage because it's a size 2 car, and Spider-Man will have to make a dodge roll using his melee dodge defense. Next power is Arch Nemesis Peter Parker. When attacking Peter Parker, Green Goblin may modify or reroll skull results, and may reroll any number of attack dice. At the start of this character's activation, if there's a non-dazed enemy Peter Parker within 3 of it, Green Goblin's first action must be an attack action, targeting Peter Parker, if available. So he's got his eyes set on Peter Parker, that's for sure. His last ability is Flight. Flight, basically, you're just going to ignore all terrain for the purposes of movement. Terrain and figures, actually. You can't land on a figure, but you can just kind of fly right over them. That takes up the healthy side. Now let's take a look at the injured side. All right, Green Goblin's taken a beating. Spider-Man has slung webs his way. I'm sure he's flung some cars his way, maybe a dumpster or two. And Green Goblin is now on the ropes. His stats up top change a little bit. He now has 5 health left, still a medium movement, still size 3, of course, and 4 threat. However, his defenses are now 3 melee defense, 3 range defense, and 5 psychic defense. I think his mind is going a little crazy on him. He still has pumpkin bombs, range of 4, but now he's going to throw 5 dice for pumpkin bombs instead of 4. Knight of the Goblin is the same power, except it costs, it's the same ability, but costs 1 less power. Range 3, 7 dice, but costs 1 less power. Oscorp Weaponry stays the same. It's his leadership ability where they get to spend 1 power to modify, reroll 1 opposing defense die. He, however, loses hit and run and gains glider ram. This character, Green Goblin, is thrown medium. It does not suffer damage if it collides with another character or terrain feature. This superpower may be used only once per activation. So he loses the ability to effectively attack and run, but he can just run. He still has Arch Nemesis Peter Parker, allowing him to modify or reroll the skull results and reroll any number of attack dice. And he's still, at the start of his activation, if there's a non-dazed Peter Parker within 3 of him, he's got to target him, and if able, he's got to target Peter Parker. The other new ability is Unstable Psyche. Now, Green Goblin cannot interact with or hold objective tokens on his injured side. During the power phase, he's going to roll 5 dice, and for each crit, wild, and hit rolled, he gains 1 power. So he's a power-crazed, power-hungry, psychotic maniac on his injured side. Much like Incredible Hulk, you won't like him when he's angry. Well, Green Goblin gets, in my opinion, a little bit stronger when he's angry. And of course, the last ability on the card is Flight, so he keeps Flight on his injured side. So that wraps up the review of what Green Goblin can do, both on his healthy and his injured side. Now, would I take him on my team? I think absolutely yes. I like a lot about Green Goblin. I like the Flight ability. I think Flight is really powerful in this game to ignore terrain, to get up on top of buildings, for positioning, things like that. I think that's great. I think his ability to pick and choose whether it's a ranged or melee attack with those pumpkin bombs is fantastic, utilizing the weaknesses of his opponents. I think the ability to pick and choose which type of condition token gets placed on the opponent is awesome. If somebody's already bleeding, he can throw Incinerate, or if they're already poisoned, he can throw Bleed, whatever is needed for the situation. I think those condition tokens are really, really underrated by a lot of people. I find them extremely, extremely valuable. Let's see, what else was there? Oh, on his injured side, rolling those 5 dice during the power phase to generate more power is incredible. So all in all, I think Green Goblin is a stellar character. If you haven't tried him and you have him in your collection, be sure to give him a shot. Thanks so much for watching this character review, Marvel Crisis Protocol character review. I do appreciate it. Be on the lookout for future reviews from me. I have Ghost Rider coming up next. I'm really excited about that because he has an ability, one of those condition tokens that's simply phenomenal. Thanks so much for watching today's Marvel Crisis Protocol character review. That is a mouthful. I do appreciate it. If you like this content, please give it a thumbs up. Comment down below of a character you'd like to see reviewed, abilities you'd like to see explained. Let me know if I got anything wrong. I don't think I did, but sometimes I do. Let me know if I got anything wrong or just how I'm doing overall. I really do appreciate it. Be sure to share it with your friends that are playing Crisis Protocol, or share it with friends that you want to get to play Crisis Protocol. I'd really appreciate the help. Thanks again, and as always, we'll see you at the next boardroom meeting.